Hi there, and welcome to the Future Makers podcast by MAND. This is where we talk to people from scientific and high-tech organizations with a purpose. I'm Angina Herman, and Hélène Iven is hiding under the hood to make sure everything runs. Today we get to speak with Hélène Iven, co-founder and CEO of DigitSoil. DigitSoil is a young agricultural technology company to be more precise, that develops soil health sensors for farmers. Welcome, Hélène.
Hi, Angina. Thanks for welcoming me.
Very happy to have you here. So let's start it off with the purpose question. Why does DigitSoil exist?
Wow, that's a good question to be asked from time to time. There are a lot of brilliant innovations going on in the agricultural field to revolutionize agriculture and make it more sustainable. But we created DigitSoil to bring a really important missing puzzle pieces to it. And thankfully, I met with a bunch of really creative people that wanted to innovate without restriction to reach that goal, to bring out of the box solution to farmers. And what is really important is by considering the complex network of important factors in farming, like the soil, the climate, the groundwater, the population dynamics of insects and microbes, and all the nature-bounded parameters of farming management. And of course, also combine it, match it with farmers' preferences and the market. So to do that, of course, we will provide tailored recommendations to farmer. So from the myriad of options, we will select the one which reaches the optimum between the highest yield, the lowest operational cost, and the highest benefit for the environment.
So how do you do that? Well, I mean, that sounds very challenging. Well, what is actually the product that you offer them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So people think that soil is just a mass of dead rocks and minerals, but it's actually not true. It's actually buzzing with life. And this life is necessary for farmers to grow their plants. So soil organisms, they release enzymes, which are molecules responsible for releasing the nutrients that are bonded to the soil particles and organic fertilizer to the plants. And at DigitSoil, we developed a technology that can provide farmers with the information they need to optimize the use of both synthetic and organic fertilizers. And how we do that is that our device measures the soil enzymatic activity. What I just described. So it's the biochemical processes responsible for releasing the nutrients to the plant in the soil. And by combining this data with current agronomic models and deep learning approach, we aim at providing farmers with the optimal timing, amount, and composition of the fertilizer to increase the nutrient uptake by the crops. And of course, like the goal is to reach sustainable productive farming system. And I know it's a mouthful, but if you want to summarize it, like just imagine that at the end of the day, we provide a ultra smart measurements and scheduling tools that find the best date and amount of fertilizer needed on a specific field to get the best result for your harvest and environment.
So it sounds like it's a combination of hardware and software, so you have to develop both.
Yes. So, well, if you want to imagine the in practice the user journey, so our proprietary technology consists of an app that helps the user to do the guided and geolocated sampling, and of a sampler that takes reproducible sample in the field and transports soil sample to the house, a farmer's house, where they have a farm lab so that that farmer can use to make the measurements. And after 1 hour per sample, they receive the result on the app that inform them about the optimal timing and amount of fertilizers that they need to apply for each field and each crop. And in addition to that, we also provide best practices for optimizing the carbon capture, so the CO2 capture in the soil, and for optimizing the direct payment and subventions based on the preference. So there is a lot of add-ons in that. And so yeah, so the hardware consists of this the device, the farm lab, that reads measurement, and also of chemical membranes that you need to apply on the soil that react with the soil, with the soil enzymes. And this measurement is measured by the device and recorded and sent in real time to the farmer on the app.
I have a question. Maybe because also some of our listeners might not know much about agriculture or agro-tech. How has it been done so far? Is it just farmers' ancient knowledge, understanding of their land and soil and weather and crop? Or has there, like, how is it done so far?
Well, that's a really good questions. You know, from a farmer's perspective, they lack information on how to fine tune their fertilizers application. But of course, they are aware that if they apply too much fertilizer, the overabundance of fertilizer will pollute the groundwater and deteriorate the biodiversity. That's something now for farmers. But it's just not the main focus when you fight the elements on a daily basis. Further, like that information is just not available. So, of course, they rely on years of experience of observing their field. They also can go on the internet and look at default values or books. They know all that, but to plan the fertilization better, they would actually need to have access to the information at the time when they are fertilizing on this complex biochemical process that we are measuring that would be occurring in their soil at that time. Um, Yet this measurements, the measurement of this process is not even available in the usual laboratories, so they could not even send their soil and it would be measured there. It is done in the research, but it has just not yet been transferred to practice. So that's the breakthrough innovation that we developed. And with our device, then farmers can measure that complex biochemical mechanism, and directly get a practical recommendation out of it.
Does the health of the soil, the quality of the soil change? Like if you do it once, then you're good for the next 5 years? Like how often do the farmers need to take these measurements?
Unfortunately, it's not the case that they can just measure once. They need to measure each time before they plan the growing season. So before seeding new crops. So this enzymatic activity that we are measuring is highly dependent on the management, so it will change with management, with the addition of new organic matter, new fertilizer. Also, it's highly dependent on the weather, on temperature and moisture. So when I told you that we are taking the data that we measure and using it in agronomic models. In these models, we also include climate predictions, and it, of course, like always, change with the climate, the weather.
So yeah, that's an interesting point. You mentioned that you have a background in agriculture yourself. Is that correct? That you're from
Yes.
a farm yourself?
So well, not exactly. I studied agricultural sciences, so I'm an agronomist, and I had to work on our farms, and I did it with a lot of pleasure because it was really cool things to do. So yes, we can say that like, and when I speak to farmers, I understand them.
Yeah.
That's a really great advantage.
Yeah, generally, I mean, I've known of the concept of ag-tech or agro-tech or however you want to abbreviate it, but it does sort of merge two cultures that feel different, that there's still this old-fashioned idea of what farming and agriculture is, and then there's this idea of what high technology is. And you also come from the ETH area, and Digital is an ETH spin-off, so it's how well do these things go together, and how outdated is this image of farming as a cozy countryside business where you just put on rubber boots and don't care about high technology?
Well, very well. That I know it's not what you would think, but let's say that farming is about growing food, and it's actually full of passionate people that are extremely creative and problem solvers on a daily basis. So, someone one would say it's wrong. Like one would say that farmers are stubborn, but it's actually wrong. They just probably know better and tried many different potential solutions on their own. So imagine their field and the animals is their life. They need to think about everything: the production, selling the products, the accounting, innovating with new crops. And I know it because I worked for a few months in a farm before the startup, and it actually felt already a lot like working in a startup. So let's say that high tech or not, we try to work closely with the farmers to learn from them, and also, of course, to bring solutions to them that they don't have access. And it's really like the only way is to build solutions together.
So in your experience, farmers are actually quite open to new solutions.
Definitely, like they are open to solutions as long as they are not fake solutions. It needs to
Hmm.
be something that bring them that save them money and save them time, and of course agree with their philosophy and preferences, but they definitely want to they're not against having a good impact on the environment. They are the one that see nature the most. They are
Yeah,
every
exactly.
day outside. It's just that it's really not easy. It's really complex to farm.
This topic brings up so many of my own prejudices. It's interesting. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I have no, like, I don't know about farming a lot. And I already, when I first remember seeing you presenting your company, and you're a young, highly educated woman working in agriculture, I'm like, okay, that seems like a clash. Like, I wonder if she gets taken seriously. But again, I have no idea. So, what's your experience in the area of agriculture or farming? Is it how easy it is for a young woman to come and tell these very experienced entrepreneurs that they could do things better? Farmers as entrepreneurs.
Well, I remember there was 1 week where I was biking from farm to farm to get feedback from farmers on my ID. And first they were like a bit like looking funny that I was coming with the bike. But then they invited me in the office always, and they started to talk to me and were super happy to share. And not they completely like forgot the first surprise of seeing
Hmm.
me, and it always ended up to be very nice conversations. So on that side, I really never had issues. The only difficult things to when you talk to farmers, that often they don't have time
Mm.
because they are so busy. But I prefer to talk to farmers and to go to startup events. Of course, it's also really, really interesting to see other entrepreneurs, to see so many brilliant minds on their own ideas. I love that. Um, but it's also very competitive and often like not very empowering. You really need to be in this female founder network to feel the empowering network.
Oh, that's an interesting point of view. Yeah, that's actually that was fun when you just mentioned that you are cycling from farmer to farmer. I mean, that is such a down to earth way of doing market research. I mean, I mean, usually when you start a company, you would just go to, conferences and events and talk to people there while wearing your nice business suit. But you actually took your bicycle and went from one farm. How many farms could you go through with just your bicycle?
With my bicycle, like I did like on 3 days, I went to 10 farms. I think it was really to reach the farm that I otherwise would not have reached. Of course, going to seminars and conferences is a really good option, but then you rather see ecosystem like network of really similar people.
Hmm.
For instance, you would see like only farmers farming organically, so it's also nice to have these different approaches.
Different approaches, but also talk about customer orientation, like you're really doing the leg and field work.
Yes, well, in a startup at the beginning, you just need to work, of course, on the startup, but also in the startup and do everything.
Absolutely.
So a bit like the farmer.
So earlier you mentioned machine learning as part of your model, and so that's something essentially. Yeah, it's a hype now. Everybody's using AI, or you're gonna get a few more listeners if you mention AI. Then what's the role of AI or machine learning in your product?
Yes, that's true that it's a buzzing word, but I truly think that AI can revolutionize the world in a positive way if we use it wisely. And I think it can revolutionize the world in part by making the very complex knowledge broadly and easily available to everyone. And in our field, this opportunity exists as well. So there is, as I already explained it, there is plenty of amazing research and global research available, which could actually result in huge improvement of the agricultural efficiency. So here I mean again like producing more food with less water, less fertilizer. But it only works if it's accessible, and it's easier said than done. And the difficulty here comes with having access to this knowledge and then correctly analyzing and applying it to a very specific field of a very specific farmer. So, in our product, to answer your question, the AI helps to bring those factors together. So, taking all that vast agricultural knowledge and combining it with the detailed, specific knowledge and allowing the farmer to fully benefit from it.
So it's are you also using some sort of AI on the user interface level, or is it more in the engine in the background to find the correct answers?
For now, we rather focus to the on the AI on the back end.
Hmm.
But in the future, we want to use AI for also helping farmers to filling it, filling in the informations because it's something very annoying for farmers.
Hmm.
So we totally have that in the backlog. But for now, we need to start with something smaller,
Yeah.
not on all the battlefields at the same time. And so our strategy is rather to team up with existing app and just plug in our app as a API,
Hmm.
so that we farmers don't need to enter their data multiple times.
Well, since we're on the topic of AI still, and we're talking about using the AI in the back end to come up with recommendations based on data, then how do you avoid hallucinations or false data? Because that's one of the problems with AI, that it can be very, it seems very confident when it gives you completely false advice. So how can you avoid that?
Well, that's a good question. Perhaps first, for the people listening, the AI hallucinations, what are they? They are false or misleading output generated by the AI, but it's actually quite specific for language AI. But while these hallucinations are like it's not a really big risk for us, there is also many other challenges with AI that very much apply to us. I think the key one is simply to get a model that maintain desired quality for all diversity of inputs. So diversity of soil and conditions and whether our client operated. And in terms of managing those risks, we will implement what we call fail-safe mechanism, such as model predictions being restricted to a reasonable range of conditions, as well as not giving any prediction at all when the model's confidence interval is too wide.
I will maybe jump into a bit into the beginning, or I don't know, when I was asking why does digital exist, maybe taking it on a more personal level. You studied agronomics, or what is it? What's the field called in ETH? But anyway, something agricultural technology and
Agricultural sciences, actually, but
agricultural sciences. Thank you.
you can tell agronomy.
Okay, okay, good.
You can
Agronomy,
understand.
nice. How did you end up doing that? Why did you choose that as your field?
Well, I decided to study agronomy when I was already 16 because I was watching a lot of documentaries, and I ended up watching a documentary about uh, like how the industrial agriculture, like that we called green revolutions, was this new way of farming after the Second World War that was using a lot of chemicals and a lot of technology was actually very bad, and also how the agricultural policy, the new agricultural policies were also very bad for the smallholders. And I thought it was a really nice topic to work on because it combined uh, like natural sciences with um, with social science and also technology. So in the end, it's really interesting field and fun field to work in.
We kind of talk about this in a scientific way and in talk about agriculture, etc. But it is a very emotional topic because it's about our food production, and food production is an emotional topic because there are constantly issues around it and the crop yields. And I kept thinking about this because it's it's nice to kind of look at it as, yeah, they're doing high tech science and they're helping farmers, etc. But eventually, it affects me in a very, very personal way, right?
Hmm.
That's perhaps also one of the reasons why I started studying that. I mean, it's I had the same.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I think like also agriculture is just at the center of politics,
Hmm.
and it's like when you look at the war between like of Russia invading Ukraine,
Hmm.
like it actually had also a lot of impacts on fertilizer prices. So you see how like everything is interlinked.
Yes.
So now the need for a solution is even bigger because like fertilizer prices were already really volatile, and this was just like because Russia and Ukraine were big producers of synthetic fertilizer, price just went up,
Hmm.
and that was also one of the topic.
Do you
Yeah.
think that's for you a positive or for a negative just for your company? I mean, if we're not looking at the ecosystem as a whole, but if the fertilizer prices are up, maybe people need to have more solutions that optimize their use.
For us, it's definitely a good thing, but I don't want to say that we profit of it, and I hope like the situation will just get better. Um, but it's definitely impacting, yeah, the choices of the farmers.
Mm.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, even if on the short term it's good for you, then you're gonna need to have customers in the future. So you don't want
Yeah,
farmers to
even
die out.
but in the future, I mean, it's we know that first synthetic fertilizers they produce um, they produce a lot of greenhouse gases just by the production first, like mostly by the production, but also because then it emits soil it emit greenhouse gases before because of that, and also it pollutes the rivers, it degrades biodiversity. So it's like we cannot continue like that.
Time for my last questions. Since we are talking to future makers here, then we should have a look into the future. So, Helen, 10 years from now, what will the world look like?
Well, I believe that first, if we keep business as usual, we'll have more of the same, just escalating. So I know I start with a very negative view of the world, but I think there will be more conflict, more poverty, more crime, more environmental damages, and with that, more instability. And I do not believe in a sudden eco revolution that will miraculously save us all. I think that we actually need to start working right now and be stubbornly optimistic, like never give up on that to really change that scenario. And I think this world is actually full of brilliant minds and people determined to launch real solutions and truly impacting technologies. And if they have the courage and means to put their ideas to reality, then I can imagine somehow getting out of this mess alive. Um, and I know today we actually focus on technology, but personally, I think that we also need a social change, and it's actually already on its way. So if you look at the biodiversity hotspots popping out in the cities, thanks to guerrilla gardening, when you throw seed bombs and plants vegetable in pots in the streets, but also a movement supporting reduced meat consumptions and purchase of locally produced seasonal products. I think we are on a good way. And in the end, like I would, I would like not to forget that on our path to stars, that in the end technology is just that heartless machines, and that we actually need the people to make the right choices um, to save future life by acting now. I hope it's not too cheesy, but I really
No, it definitely was not. We go for cheesy any day over
Yeah.
cynical or I don't know, purely commercial.
Yeah.
good. Great.
This was Hélène Iven from DigitSoil. Thank you, Helen. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thanks a lot. All the same for me.
If you like hearing stories from people who make the world a better place through science and technology, you're in luck because there's more. So make sure to subscribe to the Future Makers podcast, for example, on Spotify. Until next time.